Do you have a hunch as to what you are?
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking about maximal amputation.
This will be a maximum amputation of Vsauce and the things he says in this video, Alice Connor's video. Everything I'm saying is from the philosophy of order. If you want to be a student of the philosophy of order, comment philosopher of order below and I'll send you the link. So Vsauce attempts to find self in the recording, not the recorder. So the amnesia trap, right? If I lose my memory, right, do I cease to be a person? Is continuity required for existence, right? The teleporter problem, right? If I am cloned and the original is destroyed, did I survive or did a copy take my place? The worm dilemma. If my consciousness were put into a worm, would I still be human? Would I be me? Where does the me reside? Before we go into Vsauce's argument, you need to understand that we're at a materialist dead end here. So Vsauce's confusion stems from two flawed premises prevalent in modern science. Materialism, the belief that matter is fundamental and selfhood is merely a byproduct of brain activity. Psychological continuity, the belief that you are defined by your stream of memory, right? The consequences, defining self by memory or body leads to unsolvable paradoxes, right? The ship of Theseus, for example. If you forgot who you are, materialist logic dictates you have ceased to exist, right? This is an issue. So I'm going to take you on a paradigm shift here. Just stay with me. Use that as a mental exercise if you don't trust what I'm saying. Just use it. Abstract exploration is a framework asserting that the physical world is not base reality. It is an interface. Reality is built of abstract structures, not just atoms, right? The shift, we stop looking for self in the brain tissue, right? And start looking for it in the pattern. So the spirit is essence, right? Going back to animism, the vital essence of something. In the philosophy of order, a spirit is not a ghost or vapor. It is a structured collection of attributes that make something what it is. So in other words, it is a set of attributes, right? Let's say personality, behavioral patterns, deep instincts. I'm not saying that's what it has to be, but let's just say that remain consistent regardless of external change. It is a data set that defines identity. So spirit equals essence. That's pretty much all I'm saying here. And if you can get that, then you'll be able to understand my critique of Vsauce, whom I actually really like. I like both Alex O'Connor and Vsauce. You'll also have to understand what a womb in this context is matrix, right? The matrix is a structure medium of development, right? The niche that allows a spirit to manifest. In other words, a matrix is a medium or structure in which you develop it. Everything comes from a matrix, right? The matrix is generative. Anything that exists must first be formed in a medium or structure, right? To bring a thing into existence, to construct the matrix that allows for its manifestation. So that all has to happen. The matrix has to exist. It has to be constructed in order for anything to come into being. There has to be some sort of medium or structure for things to develop it. So I'm not using matrix in some weird science fiction way. I'm using matrix in a very universal way across any matrix that you study in any field. There's going to be a medium or structure in which you develop it. It comes from the word matre, which means womb. So an example will be an ecological niche, for example. You'll see that come back up. So the physical proof of this is convergent evolution. I can give a lot of proofs to this. For example, if you believe that math was discovered, not invented, then we know that abstract things have to precede physical things. That is the mathematical world that precedes the physical world because the physical world relies on the mathematical world. And in order to do any sort of science, you have to presume that there is an abstract world that is some sort of orderly, because you're trusting that it's always going to lead to X, Y, Z, or connecting tissue throughout the universe itself. But this is another one I like to use that is more specific to what we're talking about here. So you have a wolf and you have a thylacine. So they're different animals, obviously. The thylacine and the wolf share almost no genetic, are very far apart from one another, yet they share the same form, behavior, and function. All right. And so when I say the spirit of a canine, I just don't have a better word for canine, because prior to a canine, there were also animals that had this form. You have hyenas who aren't even related to canines at all, or either that also adopted this form. or this collection of attributes that make something what it is. All right, so the spirit of a canine is a pattern that exists independently of the genetics. The genetic code is just the method of expression of the abstract form, because abstract form is primary, meaning I can get rid of, so since you have things like thylacines that look like dogs but are actually marsupials and share no actual genetic relation, and since we know there's things that predate canines that look and act like them, that means that you can get rid of every single dog on this planet, but as long as you have the niche, the matrix, then the dog will come back again. That's what convergent evolution is pretty much saying. Now, I know some will say, that's not what convergent evolution is. Well, let me just say what it is so we understand. Evolution is not supposed to have a direction. Convergent evolution kind of challenges things because it shows you that things are evolving into something based on its niche. So people always go, Eloheem, you're acting like convergent evolution is deterministic. And within certain niches, it becomes a bit deterministic. Now, that's a conversation for another video. And I know a lot of people don't like that because evolution is not supposed to have a direction. And I've been saying that for years. But this is how convergent evolution works. So you can have two organisms that are completely genetically unrelated, but they share the same niche, role, environment. Then they'll begin to evolve or adapt, select for similar attributes. And extreme examples like the thylacine and the wolf or the hyena, they will have just about the same attributes to the point where they have formed the same being, even though they're not related. This happens in the ocean, this happens on land. So that's convergent evolution.
I mean, like losing memory seems like a really important example here. Like somebody who can't remember what happened to them yesterday or 5 minutes ago. There's this guy called Clive something who has a 7-second memory. He was a orchestral conductor and he had some kind of medical thing. It wasn't an accident. It was like a virus or something that caused him to lose his memory every 7 seconds.
Right.
And so you would sit down with him and you'd say, you know, what's going on? Like, how are you doing? And he'll be like, you're the first person I've seen in 30 years.
Yeah.
And he kept a diary where every day he wrote, I'm alive for the first time. And then he'd cross it out and go, no, now I'm alive. That wasn't the real one. And he would tick off the correct ones. And then he'd go back through and he'd cross off and there is a sense in which you want to say, even without that psychological continuity, you could take out that part of the brain entirely. There's still a person who's unified across that time.
And others would think of it as being a continuous person. Like you kept calling him he, not them or they. And you also named him Clive. Like he's got a name, a single name. So that's why I kind of just lean on your identity is linked to everything that you could do.
Yeah.
And after all, that is what leaves when you die.
Yeah.
When you die, you will never do anything that you could have done but didn't.
Yeah.
So this is more to Alex O'Connor. He more so makes his argument about Clive, right? So no memory equals no person. Vsauce, I really should have put Alex O'Connor there, argues that without memory, the self is fragmented, right? And Vsauce agrees. So you're not your recording device. So Clive is still Clive, right? Your intuition is true on that because the pattern of attributes that makes Clive across time, whether he's a baby or an adult, is still present. That's what we're calling Clive, is a collection of attributes that was there since he was a baby. And for example, parents would recognize Clive no matter how old he is, because there's a certain collection of attributes, they've known him since he was a baby, that say Clive, right? And so even if they don't recognize it though, there's a metaphysical pattern that is Clive. So in other words, you can look at it like this. Memory is the log book, right? If we're talking about, still going with the ship metaphor. And the spirit is the captain, right? Losing the log book does not kill the captain. So you can still be you without your memories. If somebody, that's like, it's ridiculous to even conceive that your memories are you. Because if you have amnesia right now, we don't take your children away. We don't take your home and say you're not you anymore. That's absolutely ridiculous. Why? Because the collection of attributes that makes are beyond your memories, right? You have different memories you had when you were 5, but that's still you.
You know, a really interesting question to me, which I think I have not thoroughly explored enough, is the link between these two things. Mereology, we were talking about before, and then this question of personhood. and whether you can have a sort of similar philosophy of both. I mean, we said, like, there isn't really this thing called a table. We just sort of decide when to call it a table and how much of it we'd have to take away until it's no longer a table. We're doing the same kind of thing with people. Like, you've kind of just got, you can take away this and you can take away that, and whether they're alive or dead or still the same person kind of just depends on your context and function.
Yeah, right. Like, there's the whole, like, would you love me if I was a worm?
Yeah, right.
That question is actually pretty deep because, well, what do you mean?
What does that even mean?
If you were a worm?
Yeah.
And I think that the average person means if my conscious experience was inside the body of a worm. They just mean my body changed because they don't think of the body as being them. They can lose an arm, they can gain weight or lose weight, and they're still them.
Mm-hmm.
They can be a worm and it's still them. The thing that isn't changing is the internal world.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think that's like one of the best ways to define what consciousness is when you get into a discussion. And a lot of times people are talking past each other. Some are talking about awareness, some are talking about interiority. I just say, look, consciousness is the thing that doesn't change for Phil in Groundhog's Day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Every morning he wakes up and everything's changed back to the way it was on 6 a.m. Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
But he remembers that thing that's not changing. His wounds go away. But the thing inside, that's what we're trying to get at when we're talking about if you were a worm, what part of the worm is you? It's that stuff. It's that mental interiority.
So you have the worm dilemma, right? So obviously you heard, if I was to put my consciousness within a worm, could I still be me? All right. So a human spirit, right, requires a human matrix to manifest. The matrix of a worm, right, can only support the spirit of a worm. Essence and form are linked. If you become a worm, you are no longer, you understand? You cannot be you as a worm. How could you even think? So Vsauce, for example, there's a collection of attributes that make Vsauce. One of those things is that he's human. So you're literally talking about a squared circle here, is what I'm trying to get people to understand. It's because yourself is literally a collection of attributes that makes, whether we agree upon those attributes or not, regardless, it's you. Whether you're a 5-year-old Vsauce, 20-year-old Vsauce, 50-year-old Vsauce, it's you. You would agree. And I get what he's saying, by the way. Vsauce is pretty much saying, he used the whole Groundhog Day, like he's making the assumption, and let me say, he's just giving these as just different philosophical musings. So I'm not saying that these are 100% positions, but I'm responding to these. So the assumption that Vsauce is making here, and a lot of people do this, and let me free you from this, please. Consciousness is not the self. So Vsauce identifies with his stream of consciousness, choosing to torture his body in order to save his mind, right? Consciousness, though, is a neutral substrate like electricity. It's not yours in the philosophy of order, at least. It just enables experience. So the self is a specific wiring or the pattern. The electricity is the same. The machine defines the function. So I could give electricity to the toaster or the radio, but the toaster is still a toaster. And a radio is still a radio. I can transfer this electricity to this radio. All I'm doing is allowing this radio to be a radio. And that same way is your consciousness animates the collection of attributes. So it allows those collections of attributes to have some sort of subjective experience, to be able to interact with the interface that we call reality. When Vsauce is even talking about consciousness, no offense to Vsauce, he just literally says, I just think it's me. It's something that thinks is me. That's not what consciousness is. Consciousness is awareness, right? Or subjective experience. I know that the debates go on in consciousness, but that's the part that most can agree with. It's awareness / subjective experience. So in that, you have a certain subjective experience, but that's just a certain kind of consciousness. In fact, as you age and grow up, you'll have many different consciousness. The kind of consciousness you have as a baby due to your brain not being fully developed is not the kind of consciousness that you could possibly have in your 30s or 40s or 50s for that matter. And the kind of consciousness you have in your 80s, you can't have that kind of consciousness in your teens. Your brain is just not the same brain and is not able to display that kind of consciousness to you in that way. And so I said to say that the worm can't have your consciousness anyway. It can't even have your collection of attributes. You will always be Vsauce and the worm will always be the worm. See, this is an issue. The swapping, right? It's asking a couple questions here. So one, if someone, let's just start with half of this. If someone was to take my memories and switch it to my worst enemy and my worst enemy's memories and give it to me, you should not torture the body that received your enemy memories because you're still you. So let me get y'all to understand this, why you're not your memories. You get other people's memories all the time. I'm sure you remember a time where you thought that you were somewhere and you vouched for it and a family member said, bro, you wasn't even born yet. You weren't even here yet. You can get memories that aren't yours just from people talking about it. You receiving someone else's memories does not change you, no matter if it's 50%, 100%, even if all the memories you got in your brain is a lie, it never happened. You're still you. You understand? You still have that collection of attributes that make you consistent whether you have those memories or not. So if you took my memories out and put it in his body and his memories out and put it into my body, I'm still me. And in fact, over time, I might start behaving like him at first, but we have different bodies, different genetics, different lifestyles. I am going to start veering back into me-ness psychologically. And let's say he takes the kind of consciousness that I have right now. The issue with them saying that continuity of you is the problem. That's what we're debating. That's what we're talking about here. That's what's up in the air. So someone going like, and you switch in him the continuity of you. And this is more of a critique of the way that Alex O'Connor is framing the question. Well, isn't that what we're talking about here? But if you're just talking about the belief that me is transferred into him and the belief that he's being transferred into this body, still, it's not about the body. It's the collection of attributes that make you what you are. If the question is, where does the pattern lie? And the pattern is going to lie in the body because the form that you're seeing is a result of the matrix in which I came from my mother's womb, from the environment I was in, the house, all those things, but also my body itself. I speak a certain way and move a certain way because of genetics, because of my eyes, because of the way I look. And again, those genetics go back to a collection of attributes that are manifesting through the physical. So what I'm saying is they echo off of each other. I hope I'm making sense there. They echo off of each other. So just in the same way that the abstract determined on how my body was going to present, the body begins to determine how the abstract parts of me respond. It's like, let's just say the psychology responds. So you're just going to start veering back into that self, but it's going to be a weird experience because you believe you're someone else, but that's just a belief. Those memories are not you.
To get an idea of your intuition here, suppose that there's you and there's like your greatest enemy. I don't know who that is. They shall remain nameless, but you need to want bad stuff to happen to them and you want good stuff to happen to you. And I'm some sort of evil, crazy doctor. And I say, here's what I'm going to do, Michael. I'm going to put you into an operation. I'm going to put you on a table and you're going to go unconscious. I'm going to take all of your memories, all of your conscious experience, and I'm going to move it over to his brain. And I'm going to take all of his and I'm going to move it over to yours. So when you wake up, you'll wake up with all of his memories. You'll look down at your hands and you'll go, gosh, just 5 minutes ago, I remember being him, and vice versa. Now, before I do this operation, I'm going to tell you that one of these, after the operation, I'm going to torture. Who do you want me to torture?
Not the body I'm inhabiting.
So you'd want me to torture the other guy's body because he'll wake up with your memories.
Hold on, wait.
He'll wake up.
When does the torture happen?
Afterwards. After the switch.
Right.
So what I've swapped is all of the memories and all of this sort of continuous experience, but none of the physical matter.
Right.
Just literally sort of as if I can go in as if it's a computer and tap, tap, tap and get rid of your memories and put his memories into you.
Yeah.
You know, who do you want me to torture?
I want you to torture my body containing his experience.
Yeah, that's interesting because now if everything about you physically stays the same, everything physical that makes you up stays the same, and yet you say, well, I'd rather that this physical self be tortured because I'm going to be over there.
Yeah.
Does that give us an argument for like the immateriality of the mind or the self? Because all of the material is still the same, but you are not identifying yourself with it anymore, you know?
Yeah, it makes me really question things like the emotion of revenge.
Yeah.
Because if you made a clone of my worst enemy,
yeah,
and then you said, well, you can torture the clone we just made, it wouldn't give me the same pleasure.
even if it had all the same memories and everything, really.
Yeah. And it's hard to pinpoint why, but then it
Yeah.
makes me question, why would I even enjoy torturing my worst enemy if they hadn't been cloned?
Yeah.
Because they also change over time. And in 1 second, they will be a clone of who they were a second ago. But I get more pleasure out of their suffering than like, hey, we made 1,000 clones of them that all think that they're the real one. You can pick one to beat up. I'd be like, that just doesn't feel fun anymore.
It doesn't feel like it because Vsauce is right about this one. It's just wrong. But let's go into it. Vsauce feels punishing a clone is unsatisfying because the clone didn't do it. All right. So from the abstract exploration or philosopher of order, if the pattern is identical, the entity is identical. The clone is the original because he possesses the exact same spirit. Punishing the clone is punishing the spirit. The problem is, it's just wrong. And I know a lot of people disagree that the clone is the person, they're one and the same and whatnot. But especially, so you're talking about a clone that has the same exact collection of attributes, and on top of that, it has now the same memories, which are built on top software and the same experiences. Those are two of the same people. But the issue is that you should torture none of them. So I guess that's the most I can say about this one. I guess we kind of agree. So this video has already gone over, so let's wrap it up here. This is the recurrent self hypothesis. Self is a pattern. You are a unique configuration of attributes. Patterns recur, and the vast universe structures repeat themselves. Recurrence equals restantiation. If your pattern does reemerge, you exist again. A self is defined not by memory, but by the recurrence of a structured pattern. And I don't understand how anybody could possibly debate this. What are you if not a collection of attributes? You would have to, unless you think that you don't exist at all. And then that could be another conversation. So if the matrix, the conditions that produce you reappears, the spirit reappears. Time is the variable. Pattern is the constant. This is a material compatible afterlife, actually. It requires no ghost of a soul, only the statistical certainty that in an infinite timeline, the conditions that created you will eventually repeat themselves and you'll just exist again. So in summary, there is no death. The pattern pauses, it does not end. If your pattern, your spirit can reemerge in the future, you have not ended, merely paused. The matrix reassembles, the spirit returns. Think about this in a multiverse example. How can there be a multitude of me's? That's how. And the reason why all of you can be conscious at the same time is because you have different kinds of consciousness. And I can go deeper into that. I could use the whole analogy of when you're driving a car and you're daydreaming, but you get home anyway, who was driving the car, right? So it's different windows of consciousness, and you're just looking and peering through different kinds of consciousness. And so I hope this helps. I don't think Alex O'Connor or Vsauce will ever see this video, but if they do, shout out to both of you. I think that both of your work is awesome, and I really enjoyed the video and the interview. If you want to become a philosopher of order, go ahead and comment philosopher of order below, and I'll set you up. Much love to y'all. By the way, it's free. Much love. Peace.